I have a popcorn ceiling that I need to skim coat over. It's an older popcorn ceiling. I'm not sure if it contains asbestos or maybe even lead. So I think my best avenue of making this go away is skim coating over it. I have never done this before. I am not a professional drywall finisher. That's why this video may be for you. If you're a DIYer and you want to skim coat over a popcorn ceiling, you can learn from my mistakes, and I'm sure there's going to be a few. I've watched a lot of videos. Everything I can find on YouTube is professionals. It's all professional skim coating over a popcorn ceiling. They make it look easy. It is not going to be that easy because I know from my little bit of drywall work that there's going to be a lot of chattering or rippling to take place as you apply the mud over the popcorn. It's going to have to be done in multiple directions to get that chattering out and to get a nice finish on this. I'm going to go with several very thin coats and try to reduce the sanding as much as possible. The thinner the coat, the better. You won't get any cracking because we're going to use bucket mud, and I'll get into that in a minute. It is not my favorite mud to use, but from what I've researched online and on YouTube, this is the mud of choice because it has more glue in it and it's going to hold better, especially if there's paint on the popcorn ceiling. In fact, there has to be paint on it to skim coat it. So what we're going to do is dig into this a little bit and we're going to get this done. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Dierdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's skim coat a popcorn ceiling. This is the product I'll be using to skim coat over the popcorn ceiling. From my research, this product with the green lid contains more glue and is best suited for skim coating over popcorn. So we're going to give this a try. I cannot use this right out of the bucket. It needs to be watered down and remixed. That's going to be part of my issue, is getting the right consistency of this mix to go over that popcorn. This is the popcorn ceiling we're going to be skim coating over. It also has popcorn on the trim between the ceiling and the wall, and we're going to be removing that trim altogether and then fixing the wall above it. There's a couple areas that have been patched, like that one right in the center of the screen, that are a little more pronounced than the rest of the ceiling. I'm going to be scraping a little bit of that off just to get it the same as the rest of the popcorn before I start. I need to take care of this first, and I believe what we have here is just a piece of lattice that's been nailed on the wall, and then this is the actual drywall surface right here that they sprayed popcorn on. So I'm not certain how I'm going to take care of this yet, but I think that as I skim coat, I'll just come down the wall some and blend this in with the wall. But I need to get this off and see exactly what's going on here. Now when I say I'm not a professional drywall finisher, I'm not. I am a licensed builder in the state of Michigan, and I have seen a ton of projects. I have a good knowledge of what's going on. I have finished drywall, but I'm not a professional. The professionals could probably skim coat this ceiling in 2 coats. I'm thinking it's going to take me 3 or 4. So, but like I say, I like to stay minimal. I like to keep it as minimal as I can. And the reason I'm cutting this with a razor knife is so that I don't rip the drywall paper. And as you can see, it is already wanting to come off. It's loose. And that's exactly what they've done. They've put a piece of lattice on here. So I'm going to go ahead and get this off, and then we'll get the skim coating. With the trim off, because they sprayed that popcorn along here, it's really built up hard in the corners. And what I want to do is I'm just going to scrape this off very lightly, just to knock it down a little bit. It's going to give me a better blend into my wall. But I want to take the pointy end of my multi-tool and just go through and kind of clean up this corner a little bit on both sides, just to give me a better definition on these corners I feel like it's going to help me lay that mud in there a whole lot better. So I'm going to get this scraped off. Then I'm going to put some plastic on the walls. I'm going to put some plastic on the floor, and then we'll get that mud mixed up. This is our pre-mixed mud, and in its current state, it is too thick to be used for what we want to use it for. And you can kind of get an idea of how thick it is. If you tried to use it this thick, what would happen is it wouldn't smooth out well. You'd be leaving big lumps. You would lose a lot of control to put this as thick as you would like to put it, and you'll wind up with a humpy, bumpy finish. So we have to thin this down some. I'm just going to pour in about a cup of water to start with. This isn't looking too bad, but I'm going to thin this out just a little more, a little deeper into the bucket and mix it up really good. Probably a half a cup of water more. I'm pretty happy with that. I don't know that it's mixed up all the way down, but it's going to give me enough to start with. And if it gets thicker along the way, I will just remix again. I'm going to be using a 14-inch black steel taping knife. I'm going to be using a 14-inch pan. They fit very nicely. And I'm going to be using a bucket scoop to help me get the mud out of the bucket and into this pan. If you'd like to get an amazing shirt like this, I've put a link down in the description to my store. Check it out. We have all kinds of cool stuff, and I would greatly appreciate it if you purchase something. Thank you. I have all my plastic up, and we're ready to get started. I have a fair amount of mud in my pan. I'm just going to load my trowel up about like that. And I'm going to start right in this corner. And I just want to see how easy it is to lay it down. Now I'm pretty happy with that consistency. I'm pretty happy with that. It's laying down nice. Now I just want to work it out. My main goal on this first coat is to keep it as thin as possible, but cover the popcorn. going to apply it from multiple directions. I'll get a little more on and then we'll take a look. So as you can see, there's a lot of chatter marks. You can see the waves and the ripples. It's washboarded, and I was expecting that. So right now this is still popcorn exposed, and I've pulled everything in this direction with pressure consistently across the knife just to get a little coating on it. Now I want to go this direction with a little more mud, but I want to stay a little light on one side of the knife so that I don't leave a line. And I should be able to pull a lot of that washboarding out. And attention to my edges. Laying my knife down. And it's my intention to try and cover all of this popcorn with the first coat. Now that I'm starting my second pass, I want to put more pressure on this side of the knife and less on the other so that it does not leave a line. Alright, I'm going to keep rocking on this and we'll come back in a little bit. This is how far I've gotten, and as you can see there's some rippling going on and some other stuff going on. And like I say, I'm not too concerned about it. I am not used to working with this amount of wet mud, meaning taping a joint or something like that is a little different than skim coating. So I'm just trying to keep it as smooth as possible so that my next coat will fit it. I am going over this with one more light coat to try and smooth it out as much as possible, but yet not put it on so heavy that I would be in trouble. So I'm getting a fairly smooth finish without applying a ton of mud. And the more you lay your knife down, the more you'll smooth it out. Little imperfections, I am not too worried about at this point in time. It's been about 24 hours and you can kind of see what I've got. I've got some lines, I've got some popcorn still kind of poking through. I'm not too worried about it. All in all, I'm pretty happy with it. I was mostly surprised by the fact of the amount that I used. It was over a bucket. There's about a bucket and a quarter on the ceiling right now, and I've probably done about a 10 by 10 square. So I'm going to continue on with the first coat. I still have quite a bit to do. It's my hope to get as much done as I can and then move the furniture over. So once I get the first coat on and dry, I will start the second coat on this section. I have one coat on about 2/3 of the ceiling now. This is what I have left. And I have some issues going on that I'm pretty sure I'll be able to fix. I've got some little holes that have been left behind. I'm going to skim over it one more time. The little bumps that you see are actually the popcorn at the very surface of the compound. When I skim over this time, I'm going to go the opposite direction that I did the first time. And I'm also going to thin the mud out considerably more. I'll show you what I got. One thing that I've noticed is no matter how much you mix a full bucket of mud, it only mixes about half of the bucket. So this is what I've got for my second coat. It's about like mashed potatoes, a little bit thinner than mashed potatoes. This is a texture that I'm used to working with when I'm doing joint work, so I believe that I'll be able to control this much better. My last coat, I spread everything this direction. This time, I'm going to spread it this way towards me, and I'm hopeful that I can get it to smooth out some more. After this coat, I may sand it lightly. I just want to see kind of how smooth this coat turns out. So I want to put a really light coat. And I think I'll have an easier time controlling my lines in my mud with this coat also. So I know you'll watch videos that say put pressure on the left, lift on the right, or lift on the side that the mud is wet, which is good advice, but that all comes with a lot of experience, and it's not something that a beginner or even myself is going to be able to pull off by the time I finish the ceiling. I will get better at it as I go, but it's not going to be perfect, and neither will yours. Also, when you're putting it on, don't be afraid to kind of like put it on thick and then take it away. You will get better results that way, actually. Also, if you feel your putty knife kind of going like this, you're not applying enough pressure, and that's causing the ripples, the washboard look. It's doing what I had hoped it would do. It's coming out very smooth. I'm going to keep going. When you do this, you just need to take your time, work your trowel, work your lines out. This type of mud does not cure fast, and it gives you a lot of time to work. And remember, thin coats. I'm going to get a little more on. We'll come back and take a look. Through here I have a bunch of little air bubbles, and it's best not to just try to put a coat over them like that, because the mud will just bridge over it, but rather work it in so that you know you've filled all those small holes with mud. Then you can go ahead and coat over it once you know you've got them filled up. When those dry, they may cause a little pucker in the mud, but that'll sand right out. This area has a lot of air bubbles in it. We're ready to go. I'm really happy how this thinner mud is spreading out on here. I'm getting virtually no lines. There's a couple, but not very many. And I'm fairly positive I'm going to have to do a third coat, but it'll be another very light coat. Now that I have a fair amount of mud on this area, I'm just going to start smoothing it out. And I'm on a work platform and not a ladder, so I'm just going to reach out as far as I can and pull it towards me. And the same thing, if you're having a hard time getting the lines out, don't hesitate to go the opposite direction to try and work those lines out. They'll work out. Just take your time, plenty of pressure on the knife, don't let it chatter, and you'll get those lines out. And it's a lot easier with a thin coat than what it is with a thicker coat. A thicker coat of mud, or even thicker mud, is harder. You have to push on it so hard that it's hard to get it even and consistent and to get it to lay out the way you want it. This is the area I have done so far, and it is 10 times smoother than what I started out with, and I'm really happy with it. I really like working with this thinner mud. My second coat is finished, but I'm going to put a third coat. My second coat was so thin that there is still some stuff showing through, just some little bumps from the popcorn. But all in all, it's really smooth. I've got some lines here and there, and it is going to need just a little bit of sanding. I think I can take care of a lot of it with this third coat. And it's just about putting it on thin. I mean, it doesn't matter to me if it takes 4 coats, so long as it's reduced sanding and it looks good when I'm finished. I do have a couple of small holes that did not fill in. I'm going to use my putty knife, a small putty knife, and fill them before I get started and scrape any high spots that I see. I have a small hole right here that just didn't get filled in, so I'm just going to use a little bit on this little putty knife and just fill that hole in before I get started. And I'm going to go around to all the small holes and do that first. There's only a couple of them. Now that the holes are filled, I just want to knock down any high spots that I see. And I have one right here. Just take my 6-inch taping knife and just scrape them off. So I'm going to go ahead and get them knocked down, and then we're going to start that third coat. For the third coat, I'm also going to go extremely light. I've got my putty fairly consistent, about the same as my second coat, and I'm going to go the same direction that I did with the first coat. So we're just going to basically do the same thing. We're going to lay it on, then we're going to take it off. Once I get an area covered, then I will start working on smoothing it. About as far as I can reach is what I want to do. And the nice thing is with this, the mud goes a lot further, so I'm not burning through the mud like I was with that first coat. And the lighter you go, the easier it is to control the lines, to keep the lines out of it, and keep it smooth. Now that I got that area covered, I want to clean everything off of my knife. Get it nice and clean. And then I want to go through and just start pulling the lines out of it and pulling off any excess. I never moved about that much mud. I want to keep it thin, so I'm not trying to build anything up. I'm just trying to pull it down. And the flatter you lay your knife against the surface, the better it's going to smooth. Moderate pressure. Just enough pressure so you don't feel the putty knife doing this. If you feel it doing that, you need a little more pressure. That is a very nice thin coat with just a couple of very small lines in it that would take a second to sand out. I am happy with that. I'm going to move on. My third coat of mud is finished and I'm getting ready to start sanding. I have some lines and some little imperfections. It won't be too bad. I'm going to use 120 and 220 grit screen paper on a pole sander. Let's take a look before I get started. I'm really happy how this turned out. Those thin coats saved me. There's 3 coats and not 2. There are some lines which may be hard to see in the camera. There's a little group of them right there. It's not really bad, and I don't think it's going to take much sanding at all to get this nice and flat. I finished sanding the ceiling. My first was with 120 and then with 220. However, there are still some lines in the ceiling, and it's not lines from trowel lines, it's lines from where popcorn has gotten stuck on the trowel and left an indent in the mud. And I'm not going to go through the effort to sand them out. And one reason being is that this mud is probably 1/8 of an inch thick over the top of this popcorn before I sanded it. So in a couple of areas, I've actually got little pieces of popcorn that are exposed. It's no big deal. When it's painted, you'll never know. So I'm not going to get too crazy trying to sand these lines out. I have 2 of them right here, and I'm just going to put some mud on them really thin. And I am not going to sand this again. I'm just going to take a little bit of time. All I want to do is fill those lines. That'll be dry in a couple of hours, and it won't require any sanding at all. It's super smooth. I still have some work to do in my corners, but I'm not going to be able to do that until I finish up this wall, get this wall blended. We've decided to go ahead and skim coat the walls in entirety. That'll be a video up and coming, maybe next week, I'm not sure. If you want to see this full room transformation, you need to go ahead and subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on anything. Let's talk time, guys. How long did this take me? Now the ceiling's not finished, but the rest of the ceiling is just going to be a repeat process of what we've already seen. So there's no sense in adding that to this video. I will do a video that is going to be a room reveal. When it's all finished, I will do a video showing you exactly what took place. We're going to be skim coating the walls as well. We're going to be doing a lot of work in here and just transforming this room. Currently, I am in at about 25 hours, and that's basically 1 week of time exactly today. That's every bit of time that I can spend to work in here. I have a busy schedule as it is, so we're just going to get it done as we can. I told my wife it may be a month before we get this room back, and I'm thinking I'm not too far off. So this job went a whole lot easier than I thought it was going to go. I think maybe it seems more intimidating than it actually is. If you have some drywall experience, I believe that you could do this without any issues at all. If you've done any type of drywall work and you've used a taping knife and you've had that in your hands, I believe that you could pull this off. The sanding wasn't too bad. That took about 2 hours. I did wind up standing on my work platform rather than the floor. It seemed to be a lot easier on my shoulders. That wasn't as time consuming as I thought it might be. But then again, I didn't have too many lines or too much of a mess. In closing, I do believe that someone with just a little bit of drywall experience could pull this off. Just do your prep work, make sure everything's covered. To spend 4 or 5 hours doing your prep work, getting your plastic up, getting everything covered is nothing compared to the amount of time that you will spend cleaning, because this dust will go everywhere. It's amazing how it even gets behind this plastic and under this plastic. So make sure you do your prep work and get everything covered well, and it'll save you a ton of cleanup time. That's all we got for this time. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those 2 videos that are going to pop up next to me. And remember to always respect the power of your power tools. We'll see you soon.